We are live. Nobody's watching right now, but they might watch the replay, so we should say something worth listening to at the beginning.
That's true. Welcome.
Welcome.
We are at the end of 40 days.
And 40 nights.
40 days and 40 nights. If you're not pure at this point,
then, you know, if these last 40 days in this book, in this journey to purity, have not changed your life, you can call Chris Valadin personally and express your complaints. His phone number is, I'm just joking, I would never give that out on the air, because some of you are crazy and you would do crazy things with that number.
if you email him, there's a better shot.
Yeah, his email is, just joking, it's a highly secretive email.
Yeah.
Anyways, we are very excited. As many of you know, hopefully you know, I'm Cole.
I'm Abram.
And Abram's been on the MR team for ages.
Yes.
He was on the team before he was on the team.
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I interned back in the day and then just have never finished my internship.
That's right. Well, just now he gets paid.
Yeah, it's nice.
Pennies, but he gets paid. So we're super excited to wrap things up, have lots of things that we think that are worth listening to right now.
Yeah. So real quick, if you have followed us at all, you know this summer we're doing our 40 days of summer, hashtag no slack summer, and we're going through the 40-day journey to purity. So yeah, many of you have been following along. Today is day 40. So if you're like us, when it gets to the end of 40 days, you're very happy that you actually finished it. And if you didn't finish it...
Comment if you did all 40 days. If you are the few, the proud, that said, I made it. Just toss a little comment down there and say, I did it. Because that is pretty impressive to make it through 40 full days.
It's true. You get to the finish line, you just want to fall across, and you're like, I'm done.
I think the only thing I've done for 40 days consecutively is breathe and eat.
Yeah, and sleep maybe.
I probably haven't even slept for 40 consecutive days. I mean, with children, there's no telling.
That's true.
Nobody has said I've made it. Maybe those waves mean you've made it. If so, way to go.
Here's the other thing is, when I did this, it took me more than 40 days. It took me like 60. Not because I do read slow, but because sometimes you get caught up on a day and you're like, wow, I got some issues here, or this hits me, you know, and you spend a day or two there, that's fine too.
And if you didn't do it with us, no problem. You can still get it. We have the PDF versions, the books. Really, we just wanted to do this summer to kind of journey together, give some thoughts. It always feels great when you're going along with other people that are in the same boat that you're in.
Yeah.
So recommend, if you're a pastor or a leader of a ministry, feel free to contact us. We'd love to give you a discount if you order them in bulk to be able to do it with your youth ministry or your young adult ministry or your old adult ministry or your medium adult ministry. Yeah. Whatever type of ministry you have. We just love to partner with churches to help win this conversation. We don't feel like the devil should get to win this conversation, and we're doing everything we can to win that ground.
Yeah. We've had people, a lot of youth groups go through this, but we've also had, at one point there was a gentleman who went through this and he was 72. So it's about wholeness, not just when you're a teenager and your sex drive kicks in and what do you do with it. That's right. Great topics. Today's topic though.
Today's topic
is covenant.
Covenant and marriage. The best way to end 40 days in a journey to purity is talking about lifelong, till death do you part, commitment.
Marriage is what brings us together today. Okay, so start off.
Yeah.
I thought, Cole normally interviews the people, but since I actually haven't made the lifelong covenant with anybody, I should ask him some questions about covenant since he's the one who actually made one. So, kick us off. What is covenant?
Covenant.
In English.
In English. That's good because that's the only language besides tongues that I speak. Okay. So that's the only language I could give that would matter. I think, especially in the context of what we're talking about in purity, covenant is obviously the commitment in the marriage covenant. My wife and I, we've been married for 12 years. It'll be 12 years August 12th. And I think that is something actually that does, it sounds crazy to have to define that, but it's in desperate need of definition.
Yeah.
Pew Research Group just recently did a study, and they polled a number of millennials, and they asked millennials their view on marriage. And really the conclusion that these millennials, which have, unfortunately both of us are millennials, so we can say this to millennials because this is us.
Yeah.
The mindset around millennials is actually has went so far to say we should rethink marriage altogether.
Really?
That it's institution that's created that really just puts unneeded pressure on people, and that really what we need to do is have more of open relationships that allow us freedom so that we can make choices as we go. And if it's not working out for us down the road, well, then we can get out of the marriage. Statistically, millennials are going to, right now, if we continue this trend, we are going to be the least married generation of any generation, and this trend has been going for a while, but we've taken it to another level. Our statistics, I think, if I remember correctly, this is off the top of my head because I didn't refresh myself on these stats before this live, even though I should have. 75% of us will be married, is all. Which that's significantly low. You just 2 generations ago, 91% of people were getting married.
Really?
So it's dropping from 91% to 75%. Just purely off of the mindset of, I think a lot of it comes from fear of commitment. Yeah. One of the things that this study had determined was that there is a fear that things aren't going to work out, was one of the contributing factors. Yeah. And the other contributing factors, just throwing this out there, I'm not knocking the male gender, but this was what the study found, is that there are far less millennial men employed. And so millennial women aren't willing to marry an unemployed millennial male.
Interesting.
I don't blame these women, Abram.
Yeah.
I just got to say. If I was a female, which I'm not, I'm very secure in my identity. If I was a female, I don't know that I'd want to marry an unemployed 30-year-old male. So, lesson men, get a job.
Keep the job.
And keep the job. And I think part of that, I don't know that that's totally a negative statistic. I think part of that is the acknowledgement that women, that we're coming to, that women have equal rights in the workplace and have equal opportunity there. Well, the economy has to adjust to that. Yeah. With this influx of women working men, there's just going to be a natural readjustment that needs to take place. The dust will settle on that. And I think that there will be more opportunities for men to work. We need to continue to empower women, and so in that, there's always growing pains whenever culture grows, and I think this is one of those areas. So we kind of tangented it a little bit, but I think there's a lot of people that are following based on our demographics that are in that age group of millennials. Yeah. And so I would just encourage those of you that are watching, I think that it's our job as faith-filled millennials to say, you know what, we're going to rebrand marriage, and we want to kind of fight for the value of marriage again. We want to fight for what marriage is known as. The mindset is ball and chain. Yeah. You're never alone again. Oh man, you know, whenever you're on a bachelor party, if for anybody that's been on a bachelor party or to a bachelor party, all night long the jokes are like,
this is your last chance to live.
This is you die tomorrow. Enjoy the night. And I think subconsciously that impacts our view of covenant. I think it impacts our view of marriage. I hate the description of ball and chain.
I mean, even look at the sitcoms. Most sitcoms that we grew up with, it was like the guy has been neutered almost. He's an idiot who's been neutered, and now he just has to do whatever his wife says.
And he sits there and he watches TV and drinks beer. Yeah. Now, I like to watch TV, and I have no problem having a good beer. However, there's much more to my life than that. And so I'm not knocking either of those things. I think what the understanding is to this, though, is really coming back to this mindset of, if I'm going to make a commitment in a covenant, I'm truly going to make it a till death do us part covenant. Yeah. I'm committing to my wife, Caitlin, until one of us is no longer breathing on this earth and if we have moved on to be with the Lord. Yeah. Now, I want to be cautious with this. I'm not here to tell you, those of you that have been divorced, I'm not keeping shame on you. I don't know your situation. I don't need to know your situation. I know that if you've made decisions that you've made, follow wherever you're at right now today. That's where the Lord, I believe, would want you to be committed to. Yeah. And so I'm not trying to tell you what to do with what's been done, but right now in this moment, I really truly believe the covenant of marriage is till death do us part. It isn't till convenience is gone. It isn't till the romance is worn off. You know, being married for 12 years, I absolutely love my wife, but man, there has been hell and high water. There have been challenging moments and times where we had to remember the covenant we made. And I think that to me, a long answer, Abram, you know that I give way longer answers than I should. So here is the quick, let me shrink this down. What I think covenant does is a covenant is a commitment that I make to somebody that supersedes emotion and comfort. So when I've covenanted to Caitlin to be with her until death do us part, I'm not now going to back out if comfort isn't there or if emotions aren't, if I'm not feeling it now.
Yeah.
I went through periods in my marriage that I didn't feel this romantic love for Caitlin.
Yeah.
She's went through periods in our marriage that she didn't feel this romantic love for me.
Yeah.
It was this till death do us part covenant that we made to each other that allowed us to hold on in those seasons.
Yeah.
And you know, the statement, I've fallen out of love, and those types of things. You know, for anybody that's felt that, I really challenge you to just say, well, you're not the only one. Any marriage that has lasted has fallen out of love at different points. But they've fought to fall back into love.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we need to understand that covenant does. Covenant allows us to say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to guard this because I have to commit to what the Lord's called me to commit to.
Yeah.
Sorry for the really long answer. I'm working on it.
That was our opener.
If Caitlin was here, she would have shut me down much earlier.
So I'll shut it down earlier. So boiling it down, commitment is choosing what you've already decided, regardless of how you feel or your situations.
Yeah, I think that's right on. I think it's us anchoring into something,
Yeah.
and then not allowing outside circumstances to determine that anchor.
That's good. Okay, so next up then off of that, as we talked about, a lot of our culture looks down upon her as undervalued marriage and covenant, like lifelong. So we're even marriage, I think we need to almost make sure we define here is marriage is, like you were saying, it's a lifelong commitment. It's, you know, in your vows you say, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for better or worse, like whatever the situation is, until we die, this is what we're talking about. So this is the type of covenant that we're talking about. We're not talking about you try out marriage for a couple years and see how that goes. Okay, so what's the benefit then of this type of long-term covenant marriage?
Well, I think
because the some of the stuff that we hear,
the mindset is there's no benefit at all.
Yeah, there's no.
Right.
It ties you down. It takes away your freedom. You are picking one person forever, and then I think even the fear of missing out kind of slips in there and stops people from like wanting to jump on
or even how can I have sex with one person the rest of my life? It's going to get boring. I'm going to lose interest.
Yep.
All of those types of things.
What if they're bad at sex?
Totally. Well, and I'll tell you this: if you're both virgins when you get married, you're both going to be bad at sex. So just accept that. For those of you that know our story, I had no clue what to do. I had to call my pastor on our wedding night and ask him what to do because I didn't know. 12 years later, we've discovered something together that has been so beautiful. It's amazing. We love it. It's incredible now. We're having the best sex of our life. But that came through a discovery period. So you don't have to have all those answers when you get into it. I don't make a covenant because I know everything. I don't make a covenant because I know that it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
I make a covenant because I feel deeply committed to this person. And I believe the Lord's anointing is on it.
Yeah.
I believe the Lord's hand of approval was on my relationship with Caitlin, and I loved her, so I made this commitment that said, I'm going to work through it now. I think that what covenant does and the value of marriage is it provides safety for relationship. Okay, so if you have a big movement is two people living together, cohabiting, and we're going to share resources, we're going to share rent, we're going to do this, but we're not ever actually going to get married because we don't see the value of it.
Yeah.
Here's the value of it. What getting married does is it ties me into a relationship where manipulation doesn't get to gain control of my interactions. And so what I mean by that is this. If I wasn't married to Caitlin and we were just dating, then I would constantly have this subconscious underlying fear that she might leave if things go awry. If I lose my job, if this takes place, if I don't please her, if I don't make her happy, and what happens a lot of times is you all of a sudden you have to operate in this place where I'm constantly being manipulated out of the fear of what the other person's going to do.
Or if you're so afraid, you may manipulate the other person.
Exactly.
With the same thing.
Where manipulation and control become the central thing that you're constantly having to filter through. So then all of a sudden I'm in a relationship and I'm trying to decide, did they really mean what they said or did they not mean it? It becomes a very high stakes relationship because there's massive opportunity for failure and cataclysmic implosion. Whereas Caitlin and I have committed till death do I part to you. She's committed that to me. So when we went through hell and high water, you know what we didn't have to establish? We didn't have to reestablish, hey, I'm committed.
Are you going to be here tomorrow?
Are you
still showing up tomorrow?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to be here tomorrow because I committed to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're going to be here tomorrow because you committed to be here tomorrow. So we don't have to work through that.
Yeah.
Now we get to throw that to the side because that's already been established. How do we come to really healthy, God-centered resolution to this problem in this situation?
Yeah.
That's, to me, what covenant does. Is it provides this safety net of relationship where we're not manipulatively controlling each other with a...
Well, maybe I'm out. If you don't like me, or like if you get too messy,
Exactly.
if you don't agree with my opinion,
if sex isn't good, if you don't want to do this in sex, if you don't want to do that, if things don't turn out, if my expectations aren't met, whatever the what if is.
Yeah. And there's even a spot in there for shame to hide. Because
Absolutely.
like, oh, well, you don't know everything about me before you get married because you can't. And then like, oh, here's something she doesn't know about me. There's something he doesn't know about me. And then am I allowed to bring this up? And will they still be here if they know this thing about me? If they know about this part of my past? If they know I have this weird quirk? If they know that I actually have a fear about this? That I feel like I'm pretending as a man and I really want to act like this. Like, if they see that, will they still be here or will they bounce?
Well, and think about this. How freeing is it when you're in a relationship with somebody that you know that you can't tell them anything about yourself that would cause them to love you less?
Dang.
Like, so that what covenant does is that actually gives us the freedom to operate fully in our own identity with our spouse.
Yeah.
Because I know that Caitlin loves me no matter what, I can be fully open with her.
Yeah.
She can see me cry. She's seen me sob. I've seen her sob. We weep. We have broken moments together. We have joyful moments together. When she's going through a bad day, she calls me and she breaks down to me. Why? Because she knows I don't view her as weak because of that, because I'm in covenant with her.
Yeah.
What covenant does is it gives you the freedom to fully be you. When you've fully committed and they've fully committed to you, you now are in a really safe place to be fully exposed and open. Hey, I'm me, and here's who I am. You think of the people in your life that are when you are exhausted, you're mentally worn out, you're emotionally worn out, you're physically worn out.
Yeah.
You have a group of people in your mind that you do not want to hang out with at that time.
The people that text you, you're just like, I can't even look at that right now. Yeah.
But then there's also probably a very small select group that you're like, no, when I'm in my worst moment, I can still have them in my world because I can be fully exposed with them and they won't look down on me, they won't look at me different. Though that's covenant. That's the depth of relationship that gives us this powerful freedom to say, I am Cole. Here are my flaws. Here are my strengths. You're going to celebrate my strengths and you're going to comfort me in my flaws, and I'm going to do the same thing to you. And we both have the full freedom to fully be ourselves. I don't know that there's much more beautiful than that in relationship. I don't personally believe you can have that without covenant.
Yeah. And what would stop anyone else from being just bouncing whenever? Because ultimately, covenant is putting the other person in front of you.
Exactly.
It's like they're above you no matter what. I'm going to choose to and defer to them to make sure that they're taken care of.
Exactly.
So if I'm not committed completely to you, and then at some point you become too much for me to handle, and then I have to somehow get above you again. So I'm either going to squash you down, or I'm going to leave, or I'm going to make myself look better.
For a non-married man, he's pretty wise, folks. And too bad he's already taken, ladies. Sorry.
But here's the other side of that. Then not just when you're a mess, but also talk about like fulfillment.
Totally. Well, and I think that's a huge thing is the excitement of watching somebody that you love so powerfully experience amazing moments and incredible things and celebrate each other. And with even this season for us, we're more vulnerable than we ever should be. Coming to Moral Revolution was an intentional decision for us because we felt like this is an environment at Bethel where there's such an empowerment of women in ministry that it was going to give Caitlin an incredible opportunity to not be Cole's wife, but to be Caitlin and to lead and to be empowered as a leader. Yeah. Not just, we want to empower her as a woman. She's a leader, and to be empowered in this environment. And so as her husband, the opportunity to see that and celebrate with that. And when she has wins, when she's doing things, she's working on a book right now. I can't wait for this to come out because of the empowerment and what that's going to do in her heart. And I love to watch her eyes just come to life when she experiences it. There's literally is nothing like that when you're in a deep covenant relationship with somebody. And I think that what you said was so right on. Covenant is selfless, whereas when we're not willing to commit, it's selfish. When I'm not willing to commit to you, it's probably because I'm looking for you to make me happy. Covenant is me trying to make you happy.
Yeah.
And that is a very different thing and creates a very different narrative for a relationship.
Yeah. We can stop right there.
That's right. Well, I mean, we're not done with live. We're done with that part.
That's great, though. I love that. Like, it's what you can give to the other person. It's not about what you can get. Okay, so here's the next thing I feel like we'd have to ask is, if you've already made a commitment, I think you kind of know what you promised to, and we can set up for, and there's resources for that. But what if you're haven't made a covenant yet? What should you be looking for in someone else? You're single, you're dating, you're at the engaged stage. Maybe you're already engaged, and you're like, hey, did I actually make the right choice here?
You know me on this. We've talked through this a little bit. So I'm not telling you that you need to take this to the bank and build every relationship around this. I do think that sometimes we major on minors when it comes to relationships. Yeah. I think that there's a point where certain things are not as important as we make them out to be. You know, I look at my wife and I, we've been together for 15 years, married for 12, we dated for 3 years before we were married. We've both changed. We don't have a lot of the same interests. We've developed some of the same interests. We don't have the same personality. We don't click in every area in every way.
You don't have the same personality as each other, or as when you first got married?
Or as we first got married. We're both different.
Because you've both grown.
Yeah, we got married at 22.
Developed.
I'm 34. So much development has went on as an individual. We've grown as a couple.
Yeah.
I think sometimes before you're married, you're looking at all kinds of things like, do we click together? Do we both like to hike? Yes, we both like to hike. This works, you know? And maybe that matters, but to me, the most important things that you're trying to process when you're when you're processing marriage, number one, do you love each other? Do you feel genuine, authentic? I'm worried about making them happy, not them making me happy. Love.
Yeah.
That's a big one right there.
And that's not out of fear. That's not out of like, can I please the other person in performance? That's I have so much more to give. I'm not looking for can I make them happy so that they like me? I like me. I'm enjoying myself. I have so much. I want to give more to that person.
A genuine desire
that
to
overflow. Yeah,
to sacrifice for them. So do you guys love each other?
Yeah.
I think one thing that I always recommend is you're looking for somebody, and you have to assess, are they arrogant? Because if they're, maybe make it a little bit more simple, are they willing to admit when they're wrong? Because if they're not willing to admit when they're wrong, it becomes really challenging to work through things together. I can't work through something with somebody that won't admit that they're wrong. And I have to make sure that I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't need them to be right in everything. I don't need them to have everything figured out. I don't need them to respond the right way all the time.
Because you won't. In 60 years of marriage, there's going to be so many things you don't know, so many things you have to figure out, so many things you're like, we tried that was horrible, let's retry.
Well, I mean, early on in our marriage, I was managing anger issues. And there were moments where we would fight and I would blow up and it would bring her to a point of tears. And then once my emotions subsided, I would always come back and say, I was wrong. And anger issues never got to any point other than, really intense arguments. But that stuff doesn't happen anymore because I've been able to acknowledge, whoa, I don't ever want to make her feel this way. And so I go back and I begin to address that. You really are looking for somebody that's willing to admit that they're wrong. Because if they'll admit that they're wrong and you both love each other, well then you're going to be able to work things out.
Yeah.
You may have painful moments, but you're going to have really powerful mountaintop experiences as you reconcile and as you work through things.
Yeah.
So I think those are two really important things, and the third one literally just escaped my brain.
Healthy.
Yes, thank you, Abram. Is are they healthy as an individual? And again, I don't think this means perfect. Healthy, yeah. I think we confuse perfection and health.
Yeah.
Health is somebody that processes life well. Okay, to me. If somebody goes through trauma and then all of a sudden they're totally okay the next day, that we think, oh, they're really healthy.
They bounce right back.
I don't think that's health. If you just lost a loved one and all of a sudden the next day you're ready to conquer the world, then I would question your health. I'm not saying perfection or tough or robotic.
Yeah.
I'm saying somebody that you can assess. We always come to a healthy resolution because internally this person has received healing from their past.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a leader that we worked with, his name's Dan Fowler, that we were with at Capitol in Sacramento for years, and he always had this statement that was so powerful. He said, 2 halves don't make a whole when it comes to relationships. In math, 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 1.
Yeah.
In relationships, a half of a person and a half of a person, that doesn't create one flesh. That creates brokenness. And so what we have to be assessing in ourselves and in the person we're dating is, am I healthy enough to work through problems?
Yeah.
Are they healthy enough to work through problems? And if we're both healthy, if we both admit when we're wrong and we love each other, when the Holy Spirit's on that and God's the center of that relationship,
Yeah.
I believe personally everything will work out.
Yeah.
Because all of the things that I look over that have shifted in my wife and I's relationship with each other, yeah, our personalities have changed individually. The way we operate together has changed. Our interests have changed. We're not even interested in some of the same things we were interested in 12 years ago. So it's hard to use all of those things as the determining factors of if the relationship, if they're the one or not.
Yeah.
I think, do you love each other? Are you healthy? And are you both willing to admit that you're wrong? Man, when the Lord's in the middle of that, it has all of the components to be a healthy relationship.
Which, this one's kind of inside of healthy. Well, it's inside of a little bit of all of them. But I think one thing maybe just to pull out and articulate there is selflessness. Like going back to what we said before, like, are they selfless in love?
Yeah.
Are they? I mean, admitting you're wrong has to be a selfless thing, and being healthy, or part of being healthy is just being selfless. Can you actually give outside of yourself, not just in a need for that?
It's good.
So it's growing.
It's great.
Okay, so
Good stuff.
what time are we looking at? Okay, so we got a few minutes to wrap up here.
You want anything from the sheet, or you want just a few questions?
We've got, I wanted to give you guys a few, you finished the 40 days, what's kind of your next steps? Beforehand, if you did the 40 days with us, or you did any part of the 40 days with us, and God did something with you, you're like, hey, I learned this part got freed, this part was empowered. We want to hear stories. Like, we love hearing stories of what God did. So email us at email mystory@morerevolution.com.
And I'll add to that, if you know of a marriage that you're like, man, this marriage is the picture of marriage, or you're in a marriage and you just say, man, I love marriage, we would love to hear those stories too.
Yeah.
We're wanting to really just broadcast marriage is awesome. It's God's design. This isn't ball and chain. This is celebration. And so we're really wanting to start to move towards a movement of just celebrating marriages. So send any great marriage stories you know to that same email, and we want to just shout it from the rooftop that, hey, God didn't screw up when he created us to marry each other.
Yes. Okay, so a few last things, because I love what happens at like conferences. I love what happens when you read a book, but more than that, I love the legacy that it leaves afterwards. What happens after this? Like, how's it walked out? How are you forever changed? So we got a couple things we just wanted to encourage you with before the end, and then we'll see if we can grab some questions if there's time. But number one is, as you're thinking about going forward, what story are you telling? I had a friend, Tiffany Cochran, used to work here for 7.5 years, and whenever there was the opportunity to compromise or to go things slower, she'd be like, that's not the story I'm telling with my life. And she said it so often it stuck with me, and I realized, like, this is the way that we capture vision for our life. This is the way that we capture what we want inside. It's like, hey, what's the story you're going to tell? It's like when you're dating and you have the ability to ask out a girl or to be asked out, like, are you going to text her? Like, do you want to tell your kids, yeah, I first texted your mom. That's how I asked her out. I'm like, that's not the story I want to tell. I want to tell my kids, hey, I may have been super nervous. I was shaking. I had my boys, like, I texted them. They prayed for me. And I'm like, okay, keep it together. And I went up there and I asked her out. And I stumbled over my words because I was so nervous. But I at least went for it. Like, that's the story I want to tell.
It's good.
Or, like, what's the story of, like, hey, I was in an abusive relationship. And I realized this is not the story that I'm going to tell my kids. This is not the story I want for my kids. The story that I want for other people is I need to step out of here. I need to get this. Or, hey, I was actually suicidal at one point and I was thinking about giving up, but I want to tell other people that there's hope. So this is the story that I'm going to tell is this didn't defeat me.
It's good.
Like what's inside of dating, inside of engagement, like you can go way too far with boundaries, but what's the story you want to tell other people? Like, hey, this is how you do it. This is how we did it. And of course, everybody's figuring stuff out. So it's not like you're not telling a perfect story, but you're telling a story of you growing and leaning into God and God showing up in that.
It's good. And the last thought we just want to leave you with is just to have hope. I think in the area of sexuality, it can be very hopeless at times. If you struggle with a porn addiction, it can feel like there's literally no way out. Yeah. If you have already become sexually active before marriage, and so much the church makes virginity purity, I think it's really important for you to hear virginity and purity are not the same thing. Purity is purity. Virginity is a fruit of it. But God can absolutely restore purity regardless of where you've been. And so I just encourage you to really seek the Lord and ask him to restore hope to you. In 1 John chapter 1, God kind of gives this instruction of how to handle sin. And he says, look, when you have sin, don't act like you don't have it. Acknowledge it. Yeah. Admit that you have sin. Have fellowship with one another. And then the Lord is faithful and just to forgive you your sins and purify you from all unrighteousness. And the interesting part about this, I think Christians, we believe we can be forgiven. But we don't believe we can be pure again. We think purity is solely dependent on our actions.
I've messed up. I can be forgiven. Now it's up to me to walk it out and make sure I got it right.
Right.
Then I can be a brighter shade of white, but never pure again.
Exactly. I've had literally people come up to me after I share my story and say, well, I'm not pure like you. Yeah. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Let's pause on that thought. You know, the interesting use of the word there in 1 John is when it says purity, it's actually the word for cleansing, and it's the same word that's used throughout the Gospels to describe what happened whenever a leper was healed of leprosy.
That's awesome.
So you have a number of things at play right there. Number one, lepers had no control over their healing. The only time you see this is when Jesus chose to come into the scene, look at the leper and said, be made clean. And when he said, you are cleansed or be made clean, it was the same exact usage of the word as it is in 1 John 1. And it's almost as if the Lord is saying, look, I am going to not just, when you had confessed to me and you come to me, I'm not just going to forgive you, but I'm actually going to come in and restore your purity. And before me, regardless of your past, once you've repented, I'm going to give you this same purity back. You also think of what happens with lepers. Lepers, once they contracted leprosy, they had to make this statement, I'm unclean, I'm unclean.
They literally declared who they were to everybody
else.
They're
declaring who they were based on their sickness and their disease.
Yeah.
Well, that's so different in our culture. What do we do in high schools and colleges if a girl has gotten around? She's a slut, she's a whore, she's all of these things.
Yeah.
We put all of these horrific, demonically driven titles on people that then become their defining statements. Let me just say this for a second. We just break every one of those off anybody. If those have been spoken over you, those are broken in Jesus' name because those are not of God. That is not what the Lord speaks over you. And I encourage you, if you know people in your life that has aligned themselves with a lying statement like that, man, have some boldness to break that off of them because that is not what the Lord would speak about them.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is these lepers who are making this declaration are required by society to make this declaration, I'm unclean.
Yeah.
The Lord heals them, and what do they immediately get to do again? They get to declare who they are. I'm Cole. I'm Abram. I'm not unclean. I am me again. It was an immediate restoration of identity because the Lord not only forgave, but he restored purity that then restored identity. And so just encourage you in that. There is absolutely hope. I encourage you to dive into 1 John 1 and let the Holy Spirit just reveal to you and speak to you in that, because God will do some powerful work of destroying shame and dismantling the condemnation that the enemy would love to heap on you because of past mistakes.
I love that. Purity is because of the cross.
That's right.
It's all Jesus.
There's hope, baby.
Whether you didn't do anything until you walked it all out perfectly, or whether you were abused, whether someone did something to you, whether you chose to do something to someone else, the only reason any of us are pure is because of Jesus.
That's right. So let's do one question. We got to do one question.
Okay.
Let's do one question. Anybody have any question?
Can we do this later? Yes, we can. Easy. Where'd you get the area rug?
Hey, Bob, what up?
Bob Bevan.
I love Bob.
All right. Any questions?
Maybe there's something new with that now. We're way back. Oh, no question, just a ooh. We're going to wait like 2 more minutes if there's any questions. We're going to get really close to the camera. See my zit right there? I'm 34. I still get them. It's so irritating.
Don't you love when people are trying to read?
Yeah, we're trying to read while we're looking.
They're thinking like, look happy
Awkward.
while you read.
I see you. I see you too. Abby from South Africa, hello. My son, my 8-year-old just walked in. Caitlin and the other kids are down in Florida. He's in the room. All right, let's go back to the top. Let's see if there's a question. We're going to answer it. Here we go.
What's your view on courtship?
Courtship. Let's go for it. I think my view on courtship. Who's your favorite roommate?
My housemate just texted me. Okay.
Courtship's great. That's great. I don't even fully know what courtship is. So maybe you can answer that.
I think in my best understanding of the books and things that I've read, a lot of it, man, some people are under the idea of like, well, dating's not in the Bible. The idea of courtship is. I think a lot of it comes to semantics, whether you define it as dating or courting or your pre-marriage engagement, like however that works. I think a lot of times courting was before we had vehicles. So you would go to the other person's house and you would court them with their family. You would spend time with your family. Personally, I think getting to know their family is a great aspect. I probably wouldn't want to start there for my first date.
Yeah.
Because I think that puts a lot of pressure on it because you have to try to keep all your stuff together in front of like 8 people and when they're all kind of like trying to size you up. So I wouldn't do that personally, but I think it's great to put yourself, because it's accountability essentially is what the big idea. The benefit of courtship, I think, is accountability. It's, hey, we're interested in each other and we want other people who are wise and smart and know us would rather like jump in here and be able to like speak in and go, hey, this looks great. Be careful of this. Like, I think you guys would fit well here.
Yeah, and I don't really know all the details of courtship. I would just say this with dating. I think the Lord has grace for cultural shift. Just 2018 is not what it was back then. And so you have to realize back then people, like David had multiple wives. Solomon had multiple wives. So, I mean, there's certain things that just
which isn't correct, just for the record.
Yeah, I'm not looking for another wife.
That wasn't okay.
You just have such significant cultural changes. I think certain things we try to reincorporate now aren't like make it or break it type of things scripturally. You know, there's nowhere in the Bible that says you have to court. What I would say is you need to constantly ask the question, am I honoring God in the way that I'm having a relationship?
Yeah.
Am I honoring God in the way that I'm dating? Am I honoring them? Jason Vollen says it this way, is I have to ask myself, am I dating in such a way that will leave this person better if we were to break up than when we started dating?
That's good.
That's a really good question to ask.
Yeah.
I think if I'm constantly asking in my dating relationship, am I honoring God? That's going to answer a lot of questions for me. And I think the other thing with it is we have to realize if you look at Scripture and the way that God interacts with humanity, for whatever reason, He empowers us to make choices. He put both trees in the center. Why? Because He wanted us to be decision makers. He wanted us to be empowered to make decisions, to make choices. But then we also need to understand we're going to have to face consequences, good or bad, of those decisions. Yeah. So I would just address dating in general over courtship and just say, I would just encourage you to understand God empowers you to make decisions, but honor Him in those decisions and date in such a way that leaves that person better off when you're done, whether you end up being married or the relationship ends up falling apart, whatever it is, that's okay. Just make sure you've done it and managed it in such a way that you've honored them and left them better than when you started.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's my answer on courtship. And maybe courtship's your answer to that. Let's just do one more question. Okay. It's kind of fun.
Great question.
Should you let them, if you love someone, is it okay to continue to like them, or should you let them go and focus on Jesus? I don't know the context of that scenario. Is it biblical for a female to pursue the male first? Whoa, big time stuff here.
You got a different one you want to answer? Yeah, you can think about that one and you can answer that one. But if you love someone, I don't fully understand the idea. Hey, the question is, if you love someone, is it okay to continue to like them or to let them go? I don't fully understand, but just a big principle that I think we like to go by is it takes 3 yeses for a relationship to work. It takes your yes, his yes, or her yes, depending upon. It takes the guy's yes, the girl's yes, and it takes God's yes. If one of those is missing, then it's not going to work out well. if you really like the person and God's like, yeah, this is a great fit for you, and the other person's out, then you bow out and you let them do what they want to do. Like, they will go on. So I just wanted to throw that in, because otherwise you're left with manipulation, or you're left hanging on for many years too long, where you're just setting yourself up to get hurt.
Yeah,
so
it's good. As far as male or female pursuing each other, I would say this. The Bible doesn't tell us how to pursue each other in relationship. In the Bible, the way that a man would pursue, he'd see an attractive woman, he'd go to the father, I've got 6 sheep on it, can I have her? And the dad would say yes or no, and he'd marry her. So again, not everything's super totally translatable. I would say this, though, the analogy that God gives us is in Ephesians, and he says, husbands, be to your wives what Christ is to the church, and Christ pursued the church. And so if I'm to be to my wife what Christ is to me, then it is my job to serve, go after, and even to the point of self-sacrifice for her betterment.
Yeah.
I pursued Caitlin. I showered gifts on her and spent way more money than I had on our first dinner, and I ate escargot that I didn't know what it was just to impress her. I don't think that has to be the route. I'm not telling you women that if you see a godly man that you think you could be interested in, to not let him know that. I just think that if we're going to use that analogy, we have to, really, men, it's time to go after who God's called us to go after and pursue what he's called us to pursue.
I'll also know, I think there's a difference between initiation and pursuit. If you want to, I know people have issues like nowadays, back to then, if you want to go back then, women would often drop their handkerchief on the ground as an opportunity to basically stop the man to go, hey, what do you think? And so we have Havila, I believe, texted Ben first, and so there's a lot of times you can bump into him. There's a lot of ways to initiate, and then I think at some point, I just believe personally, I believe that there's something inside of men that comes alive that has to break past fear to then pursue, and there's something inside of a woman that want to be pursued. So
yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, with letting your feelings be known.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, just so you know, if you were to ask me on a date, I'd probably say yes.
Yeah.
So
I've had that happen to me.
Just putting that out there. I bet you've had it a lot of times, Abram. You're a catch, man. So I think that I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this.
Yeah.
I think you are all powerful people that can listen to the Holy Spirit, so let him guide you in it.
Absolutely. Cool.
Good. Let's just do one more. Come on. We'll just keep doing one more. What about online Christian dating? What do you think, Abram? You go first.
One of my best friends just got married to a girl from Canada.
Because of online?
Yeah, online. He met at christianmingle.com. And I honestly first thought it was a joke. And then he told me about it. I was like, oh, okay. I feel like...
I would say this. I don't think you could build the foundation for a marriage solely online. But if the connect point is online, and then you've got lots of face-to-face interaction, awesome. Why would that be any, if that's the point of connection, why would that be any worse than anything else as far as meeting somebody? I would caution you against spending your entire dating or engaged period on FaceTime and not being in the same area or same city and same region without spending time together. Because that can be really challenging if you've never really just talked and seen each other interact with family and friends. But yeah, I don't...
Also note, there's a book, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping by Henry Cloud. Brilliant book. But in it, he talks about 10, 15 years ago, you would be connected. You go to church and you'd be like, oh, there's always the sweet old lady at church. He's like, well, I have a niece who's about your age, and you guys like this and you like this, and then they'd introduce you and get you together. Nowadays, the way that our culture has become so much more transient, we essentially don't have those community places that we go to have common connections. I'm like, oh, you're about the same age, you guys like the same things, why don't you go on a date, or why don't you guys talk and see if anything happens? So I think online dating has kind of replaced the matchmaker role from 20 years ago.
I would say online matchmaking is great. Online dating, if that's the only interaction before marriage, could be a problem.
Yeah, because you want to see a human.
There we go. We're not going to answer any more questions.
Okay.
We've answered many. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
We love you. Moral revolution for life.